Well, Hawaii braces for 2 hurricanes in the Pacific Ocean, but they first dealt with an earthquake today.
We had a 4.5 magnitude earthquake that hit just northwest of Hilo.
No reports of injuries or any substantial damage, and the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center says there is very little risk of it forming into a tsunami.
The state of Hawaii is, of course, used to changeable weather, but nothing like this. A state of emergency is in effect tonight for an approaching hurricane and then another one after that. They have only been hit by 3 hurricanes since 1950. This is the first time in 22 years.
National Weather Service says the islands have never faced 2 such strong storms back to back.
And this image tonight, Isel coming ashore, cameras rolling, capturing the moment of impact. Tonight, vacationing families and the people who live there hunkered down, and from the storm zone, the trees ripped from the ground, down power lines, chaos at the airports, and a gas station closed, the pumps wrapped in plastic.
But the big story on the Big Island, all that big water, some areas soaked with a foot of rain. The first of a double weather punch landed squarely on the Big Island of Hawaii. Tonight the island is battered and bruised, but still standing.
Julio still very strong, but that path stays north. I don't think the islands will see a whole lot of impact.
Thousands of people in Burlington, Ontario woke up this morning to a huge mess after a wild night of flash flooding. The amount of rain was astonishing. 2 months' worth fell in a matter of hours. That trapped people in cars. It flooded hundreds of homes.
Storm clouds crisscrossed the Toronto lakefront last night, but the epicenter of the storms were down the road at the western end of Lake Ontario, Burlington. 6 weeks of rain fell in 6 hours. Even major highways were swamped. Good luck driving through it.
Danger in the west. More heavy rain and flash flooding expected into the evening. And this astonishing moment near Las Vegas. That car swept away, inside a driver trapped. Another car there in the river hurtling toward them. We will show you what happened next year. And also tonight in Salt Lake City, a state of emergency. A home collapsing as the camera rolls.
Collapsed after heavy rains triggered a landslide.
In Naples, Florida, water filling the runways at the airport. Thunderstorms dropping more than 6.5 inches of rain. The wettest August day on record. 4 inches falling in just an hour. Water submerging vehicle after vehicle. The paddling, the towing, and the sweeping. Workers using brooms to push the water back out of this restaurant. This hospital campus transforming into a lake, complete with swimming fish. And in Chicago overnight, standing water shutting down this interstate. People abandoning their cars, trudging through the floods on foot.
In Bosnia, hundreds of people have been evacuated from the central village of Zelezna Polja for the second time in months due to severe flooding. At least 2 people are reportedly missing. This month's heavy rainfall has hit many of the same areas, devastated in May by the worst Balkan floods in more than a century.
39 people are now dead in the Orissa floods. About 10 lakh people are affected across 23 districts. With rains continuing and the pace of relief and rehabilitation by the government failing to match up with the plight of the affected, it's now a massive crisis that's looming.
Typhoon Halong has hit southwest Japan with devastating effects, bringing heavy rain and winds of up to 180 kilometers an hour,
triggering landslides, floods, and even tornadoes,
leaving as many as 10 people dead and dozens more injured.
Authorities had ordered some 1.6 million people to evacuate from the path of the typhoon, as more than 470 buildings were destroyed in a prefecture north of Tokyo.
At least 9 people have been killed and 11 others are missing after heavy rains lashed southwest China. So far, 3,000 people have had to be evacuated for safety reasons. Meanwhile, there are warnings of more rain due for the quake-hit zone in Yunnan province, raising the risk of more flooding and landslides.
Here, 9 flood warnings and 48 flood alerts are now in place across parts of the UK. Large areas of the country being hit by severe weather today, as Britain felt the effects of the remains of Hurricane Bertha. Areas in the south being hit first, strong winds with flooding and, of course, spring tides as well. While in Nottingham, flash floods caused problems for motorists there as roads became difficult to navigate. And a woman was injured in Hull by what residents described as a mini tornado.
Record rain from Michigan all the way down to D.C. and Maryland. Officials say every major highway in southeastern Michigan has been affected. Drivers caught off guard had to be rescued from their submerged vehicles. Now Baltimore is in the bullseye tonight, a flash flood emergency there.
Historic doesn't even begin to describe the scope of the flooding in Detroit. Interstates 94, 75, and 696 under as much as 14 feet of water after a deluge of rain. More than 1,000 cars abandoned, many completely submerged.
In New York, a state of emergency. 13 inches of rain in just hours, setting a new record for the entire state.
At least one person is dead in what some are calling a once-in-a-200-year storm that took this area completely off guard.
One vehicle was completely swallowed by a sinkhole in Pittsburgh.
Flash flooding wreaking havoc in the West, too. In Phoenix, watch. A man trapped on the roof of his car. Firefighters on the scene as the rushing water was about to wash it away. Oh no. Seconds to spare, he has only one choice. A leap of faith, jumping toward the truck and to safety. The system flooding the east got its start in the Midwest, and here's what it did to Good Samaritan Hospital in Kearney, Nebraska. The images coming out tonight, the hospital's dining room flooded after 9 feet of water crashed through the windows. Thankfully, no one was hurt.
Well, if you're starting to think when it rains it really pours, you're right. Especially in the last 30 to 50 years, heavy downpours have gotten heavier in the United States. It slipped Long Island. It rained so hard Wednesday that a New York State 24-hour precip record was shattered, 13.57 inches. The old record, 11.6 inches, was set in August 2011 during Irene.
Oh my God!
Earlier in the week, the same slow-moving weather system dropped flooding rain on Detroit and the Baltimore-Washington area. Part of the National Climate Assessment Report published in May says heavy downpours are indeed increasing both in frequency and intensity. This map shows percent increases in the amount of precipitation falling in very heavy events. The Midwest and especially the Northeast show the most dramatic increases since 1958. Climate scientists say rising temperatures are to blame. The National Climate Assessment Report simply says, quote, warmer air can contain more water vapor than cooler air. That means storms can wring more water out of the air, causing more frequent and heavier downpours.
Floods and landslides in northern India and Nepal have left at least 180 people dead. Thousands more have been marooned in villages here in Uttar Pradesh state, where water from overflowing dams in neighbouring Nepal has added to the impact of heavy rain in the Himalayas.
The landslides and flooding were triggered by annual monsoon rains, causing rain-soaked earth and rocks to crash down on homes. Rivers swelled and washed away low-lying villages, leaving residents to have to use makeshift rafts to escape the water, with little time to collect belongings.
Concerns about those displaced by the flood is rising, as more rain is forecast in India's most populous state of Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand in the Himalayas.
We want to shift our focus now to the American Southwest, and there is a huge drama playing out tonight in and around Phoenix, Arizona. The problem is way too much water, a torrent of rain falling too quickly in that desert state. That has triggered flash floods and high water rescues from people trapped in their homes and cars.
5 inches of rain fell in some areas, almost as much rain in a few hours as parts of the state get in an entire year,
leaving families in this neighborhood little time to escape.
It was the day the Earth opened up. Last week, a giant crack appeared in Mexico, and scientists really aren't quite sure how it got there.
This crack stretches nearly 2/3 of a mile and measures close to 30 feet deep and more than 15 feet wide across in some spots. This is in the rural area 50 miles west of the city of Hermosillo in the state of Sonora. While some believe seismic activity is to blame,
following a 5.0 magnitude quake earlier this month,
others point to an underground stream that eroded the ground above it.
Forecasts for heavy rains in western Japan have raised the risk for further landslides, causing critical rescue efforts to slow and even stop at times.
Japanese media reported that parts of Hiroshima City had seen the highest record levels of rainfall ever, with some areas seeing more than 204 millimeters of rain in 3 hours. In 3 separate areas of Hiroshima City, landslides pushed rivers of mud through people's homes.
At least 52 people were killed and 28 remain missing, according to local police.
On Wednesday, floods of mud, rocks, and timber swept down the mountains and into the valleys in Hiroshima's suburbs.
The city of Hiroshima had issued a landslide warning slightly past 1 a.m. local time, but many residents didn't realize anything was wrong until they saw their neighbors being swept away.
Floodwaters in parts of central Sweden are said by emergency workers to be at catastrophic levels, with more rain expected to make things worse by the weekend. Sections of a motorway and the main railway line were closed. Worst hit has been Farmland County in the city of Kristinehamn, where several roads were closed and a dam was flooded.
Rain-triggered floods have forced an evacuation of around 20,000 local residents in East China's Zhejiang province. The city of Lishui was the worst hit by the rainstorm, which had been going on since last Saturday. The strong rainfall has impacted more than 450,000 people across the whole province, with the storm alerts issued several times.
In this country, we're keeping an eye on a triple threat of severe weather threatening millions as we head into the weekend. Torrential downpours swept through a good swath of the country today, causing major flooding in the Midwest.
Quick-moving storms dumped nearly 10 inches of heavy rain on parts of the Midwest early this morning. Stretches of highway under waist-deep water had to be closed as cars were nearly swept away. In Illinois, drivers scrambled for alternate route. Dozens were stranded when roads in and around Chicago submerged. Flooding is not just a problem in the Midwest. From upstate New York to western Pennsylvania, creeks unexpectedly overflowed into homes. Across the country in Washington state, heavy rains triggered mudslides, which blocked highways, stranding some motorists overnight. In Arizona and Southern California, it was the lack of moisture and strong wind that created a blinding dust storm.
A few days ago, this was just a typical piece of North Pennines hillside. But on Thursday morning, landowner John Hensby and his partner realised there was a problem.
Sam had been out shooting rabbits and she saw from the other side there a hole had appeared. It was about 5 meters across. So she came back and told me, and it was about an hour later I went out, and the hole was about 3 times that diameter then, and noisy. The rumbling from 200 feet down and the crashing, great lumps of stuff falling in there, was quite frightening.
We begin tonight with the most powerful earthquake to hit California's Bay Area in a quarter century. It was well before dawn when a quake measuring 6.1 and centered 33 miles northeast of San Francisco shook Napa, Sonoma, and Solano counties.
The fire captain in the city of Napa, California, says it was the worst shaking he has ever experienced.
The wine country earthquake triggered smaller jolts that shook nearly every fault in the Bay Area.
Dozens of buildings in Napa's historic downtown are damaged. An entire wall of this 3-story building gone, and roads ripped apart and buckled. The quake also ruptured gas lines, causing these mobile homes to explode in flames. 4 of them destroyed, another 2 with major damage.
About 120 structures have been red tagged, which means they're uninhabitable. Dozens more homes are badly battered.
For many, Napa means one thing: wine. By late this morning, pictures began to emerge. Piles of bottles, many several $100s each, tossed around like garbage.
One early estimate puts damage at $1 billion.
After this morning's earthquake in Napa, California, concerns tonight about another earthquake, a magnitude 7.0.
Struck central Peru. The seismological service says that the quake occurred on Sunday night and was centered about 42 kilometers east of Tambo, about 471 kilometers southeast of the capital of Lima. There are no immediate reports of damage or injuries.
Record downpours leading up to Monday have cost lives and done damage to Korea's southeastern Gyeongsangnam-do province. At least 5 people were killed and more are missing.
In Changwon, Southeast Korea, a city bus is swept away in flash floods caused by heavy rain.
Caught in the fast-moving currents, the bus tips onto its side, and in an instant, it disappears, submerged under the rushing water. At least one person was killed in this incident. This is just one of the unfortunate effects of the record rain that drenched southeastern Korea on Monday.
Let's roll the next piece of video because it's also pretty significant when you see here how many cars, dozens and dozens of vehicles stuck in the water. Dramatic rescues that were ongoing throughout the day, areas that could not even be crossed because of flooding and because of mudslides like the ones that you are seeing right there.
Within 3 hours, more than 240 millimeters of rain fell in Changwon, Busan, and other surrounding cities. Weather officials say showers are expected this week in central and eastern parts of Korea, with the monsoon season lingering until mid-September.
Iceland continues to prepare this morning for a possible volcano eruption. The volcano, buried deep under one of Europe's largest glaciers, is rumbling to life. Since August 16th, more than 3,000 tremors per minute have led to more than 2,600 earthquakes.
2 tremors at Baradabunga were more than magnitude 5. The previous night saw the biggest yet, while another quake shook a nearby volcano.
So you may remember back in 2010, another eruption in Iceland created an ash cloud 9 miles high.
This could be the volcano from hell.
A volcanic eruption on Papua New Guinea has led to evacuations and some flight disruptions in the region. The Australian government has evacuated communities near Mount Tavurvur after it erupted last week. Those who were allowed to stay were advised to stay indoors and avoid the falling ash.
For the Sun, it's been a pretty busy week, cosmically speaking. Enhanced pictures from NASA's Solar Dynamic Observatory proving the point.
With more than 6 flares recorded from the left side of the Sun. Solar flares are powerful bursts of radiation. They're not harmful to humans, but they can disturb GPS and communication signals.
At the very least, you may get to see a wonderful display like the Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights. This is what happens when solar winds hit the Earth's upper atmosphere.
Hundreds and thousands of dead fish have taken over the shores of Mexico's Cajitalan Lagoon over the past week, sparking an investigation into local wastewater treatment plants thought to be responsible. Nearly 50 tons of Pokcho chub freshwater fish have been removed from the lagoon in the past 2 days. With numbers expected to increase in the coming days, the leader of the fishermen's cooperative in the area said the mass fish death was caused by high levels of pollution at the bottom of the lagoon.
Yet another baby dolphin has been killed by a virus lurking in the Indian River Lagoon. 15 were killed last month, with another found dead yesterday. Scientists say the deaths are being caused by the morbillivirus, a sickness passed from animal to animal. Right now, the disease seems to be staying, though, in the northern end of the lagoon, but scientists say the area to the south could be next. About 700 dolphins live in the lagoon, and it's now calving season, which makes this disease even more dangerous.
At least 10 people have died and 30 others are still missing after heavy rainfall triggered landslides in southwest China. Stormy weather and devastating floods has destroyed thousands of homes in the county of Yongyang.
Rescuers work through the night to save 15 villagers stranded by floods in Chongqing, China, after the river rose by 3 meters in just 2 hours.
According to the city authorities, the rainstorm has so far affected more than 450,000 people.
The effusive lava eruption that began early on Sunday near Iceland's Bardabunga volcano was still spouting lava on Monday. Now, this eruption briefly caused the country to raise its ash alert level for aviation to its highest level. It produced lava fountains which were more than 50 meters high. This was downgraded when there was no ash detected.
Severe storms rolled through parts of the state this morning, and the worst weather hit Wright County with damaging winds and large hail. As meteorologist Lauren Casey shows us, for farmers there, the storm is devastating.
Piles of hail up to feet deep is an incredible sight to a meteorologist, but is a sight that farmers in Waverly hope to never see, especially at harvest time.
Today, yeah, and in years, yeah. Right around here, this is as bad as we've seen it.
There's a state of emergency on the Big Island of Hawaii because of an active volcano. Experts say lava from the Kilauea volcano has been advancing nearly 1,000 feet a day since July 10th, threatening a rural community less than a mile away. Mandatory evacuations have not been ordered yet. Kilauea has been continuously erupting since 1983.
Overnight flooding, high winds, and power outages devastating Chicago, Detroit, and surrounding areas as a powerful set of storms move through the Midwest.
At its peak, 600,000 people were without electricity in Illinois and Michigan, and it could be days before power is fully restored.
Flooding was the cause for concern in most areas.
Ominous clouds and lightning seen all across the region, but the most trouble came from hurricane-strength winds up to 80 miles an hour in places, bringing down power lines and sparking fires.
Back out west, tonight off the coast of Mexico, Hurricane Norbert has weakened to a tropical storm, but its moisture has already caused flash flooding in Southern California. Now from LA to Phoenix, they're bracing for what could be the storm's next powerful punch.
And now to our other developing story, the battle to control wildfires burning in the West. Neighbors in Corvallis, Oregon, watching as a growing fire pushed hundreds of families out of their homes overnight. Firefighters are on the lines there and at the site of two major fires in California at this hour.
It was an all-out assault from both the air and ground. 3 DC-10 tankers dumped thousands of gallons of slurry. Down below, fire crews worked to save more than 700 homes.
New Zealand survived a close pass by an asteroid this past weekend. And here's why we report on such things. A meteorite strike in Nicaragua, considered a small one but a big crater. It perhaps broke off from this weekend's asteroid.
Remains of Hurricane Norbert are causing deadly problems in the Southwest. The storm is dropping record amounts of rain in communities hit by drought for months. Flooding killed at least 2 people, stranding drivers and closing roads in Arizona, California, Utah, and Nevada.
In Arizona, the wettest day on record. This quickly became a state of emergency.
More than 3 inches of rain made this the wettest day in Phoenix since record-keeping began in 1895. The rains are caused by what's left of a tropical storm from the Pacific.
The storm pummeled the Las Vegas Strip, dumping more than 3 inches of rain in just 1 hour, flooding attractions like the High Roller Ferris wheel and closing a 20-mile stretch of the I-15, the only interstate into the city.
Southern California was also hammered. Tonight, the cleanup from LA to Phoenix underway as the West braces for more.
Emergency workers are trying to reach hundreds of thousands of people in northern India and Pakistan, cut off by the worst floods for decades. Hundreds have died in the disputed Himalayan region of Kashmir. In the Indian-administered zone, the army has been transporting boats by air to evacuate people from the worst affected areas. Stories are emerging of people being stranded for hours before being rescued by neighbors.
The Indian government said by Wednesday morning more than 76,500 people had been rescued in Indian-controlled Kashmir.
In Pakistan, it's thought the floods could be linked to the collapse of a mosque in Lahore, which killed at least 24 people yesterday. The Chenab River has risen dramatically and more flooding is expected over the next 48 hours. Thousands of homes have been submerged, roads and power lines damaged, and thousands left without electricity and drinking water.
At least 457 have died so far, and more than 1.5 million people have been affected in both India and Pakistan.
People in northern Japan are coping with tremendous amounts of rain that have fallen since last night,
triggering Japanese authorities to order the evacuation of about 1 million people living near riverbanks. Japanese Meteorological Agency issued emergency alerts for flooding and ground loosening due to rain and extremely unstable weather conditions. Weather officials say such extreme weather is unprecedented in Hokkaido.
Croatian National Rescue Agency DUZS said on Sunday that as many as 2/3 of 21 Croatian counties are struggling with flooding, with the worst occurring in the center of the country. The biggest threat is in flooded areas around the central towns of Šišak, Hrvatska Kostajnica, and Karlovac. Several villages have been evacuated and a state of emergency has been declared in the northern municipality of Nedelišće.
Just 3 months after floods devastated parts of the region and claimed dozens of lives, more heavy rains are now swamping northwestern Bosnia.
Slovenia was also hit in eastern and south central regions. At least one person was killed and another reported missing when their car plunged into a stream after a river burst its banks. Dozens of country roads have been closed because of the flooding and landslides.
Slamming ashore with 125-mile-an-hour winds, Hurricane Odile pummeled Cabo San Lucas. Nearly a foot of rain in just hours. A Category 3 hurricane, winds peeled back roofs, swamped streets, and cut power across the popular tourist region.
Odile is the strongest hurricane on record to hit Baja California. Its force evident everywhere, especially outside the fortified resorts. Emergency shelters were set up to hold up to 30,000 people. Residents returning to their homes in Cabo San Lucas found little left. Many homes completely flattened.
The official name for it is a fireball. It's a meteor that emits a bright light. One skipped along the Earth's atmosphere, lighting up the sky from New Jersey to Ohio. More than 190 reports have poured in to the American Meteor Society.
People in Pennsylvania and Delaware also said they saw the meteor. In fact, Justin Weather, which mapped out where reports of the meteor came from, says it was also seen by people in Maryland, Virginia, and even New York City.
Old Northern California logging town called Weed rightfully brags about its natural beauty. But tonight, much of it is up in flames. Trees turned into kindling, feeding a wildfire that has driven hundreds of people from their homes. And that is just one of a dozen major wildfires in the state tonight. 6,000 firefighters are battling flames that have burned well over 183,000 acres.
Fueled by record temperatures and parched terrain.
Fire crews were still battling the fast-moving blaze that tore through the California town of Weed near the Oregon border. The wind-driven wildfire exploded Monday afternoon, burning cars, buildings, and destroying more than 110 homes.
A police vehicle makes its way through the floodwaters, heading to villages and towns that have been flooded for days. Houses have been hit. At least one person has died. Rescue teams do what they can to reach those in need. The government has declared a state of emergency in 3 eastern municipalities. Those who have been hit say they have never seen anything like it. In parts of the country, streets have literally become rivers.